y'all. So, welcome back to the Coffee Chat, where we serve up leadership, mentorship, and authentic conversations over our favorite cup of brew. I'm your host, Diondria Brown, and today's episode is all about building a creative career in tech without playing by those outdated rules. I'm joined by Juwon the Techie. He's a senior product manager and a creator who's blending enterprise tech and real storytelling. He's worked with a lot of different companies and he hosts an amazing podcast on YouTube. We're definitely going to plug it at the end, where he highlights the stories of Black professionals in tech. So, from everything from navigating APIs to building community, Juwon shows us what it's meant to lead with both skill and substance. Juwon, welcome to the Coffee Chat.
Wow, thank you so much for that amazing welcome.
Yes, for sure. I'm super excited for our conversation today. But before we jump in, we always got to talk about it. What you sipping on today? What's in your cup?
It's so interesting. Like I was just having some orange juice and a coffee mugs
That is perfect.
and then some water as well.
Okay, cool. You got to stay hydrated. Listen, I got my coffee. So I made my own drink. I think that I am an at-home barista. So this is a chocolate chip brown sugar latte. But I got my water over on the side too. So we're aligned. We're aligned with the double drinks.
Absolutely.
You know how it is at the desk. So before we jump in, I love to kind of give a little bit of backstory for my guests and talk about how we met. So I'm gonna let you tell everybody how we actually know each other and then how this is kind of full circle for us.
Yeah, it's such an amazing moment. I was doing research on guests for my podcast that I started just a little under 2 years ago. And I found your profile. I thought, you were, a strong professional to inspire my community. And, of course, episode is great. I think you guys should go check it out. And we did have that connection. So it is full circle, as you really say it, right? Because now, I'm on the other side getting interviewed, and I'm really excited to share today.
Yes, I'm super excited. Yeah, that was an amazing moment in time for both of us. You know, you were getting started and that was my first speaking opportunity. So I didn't know what to expect, but you made me feel so comfortable and so confident. And it's like, I feel like you pulled my story out of me. So yeah, this is full circle. I'm super happy, super excited that we get to connect again on a different level. Hopefully we get to work together again in the future on some other stuff. But for
Absolutely.
today,
And when we were backstage, yeah, I'm sorry to quickly
yeah.
interrupt, but that's like the first question I asked, when we were backstage was why you got this started. And I really like your reason, your mission, your passion. I think, podcasts are a very great medium to communicate ideas to the world. If you think about everyone who's existed before us and everyone who come after, like at the end of the day, like we're all reduced to stories, right? And I think the stories that we tell, the way that we curate and the way that we inspire the world is some of the most powerful work that we can do. So kudos to you, and I wish you all the best in this journey.
Thank you. Thank you. Look, I receive it all. I receive it all. I've seen you grow. So that was also something that was like super inspiring for me. You're someone who's making tech content that actually hits. It's purposeful and it's driven towards us, right? We don't always have a lot of visibility into what others are doing that look like us in the space. So, what made you realize that you could do both, right? Because a lot of people get stuck in that 9 to 5 box and they don't want to pursue or use their LinkedIn for their own passions. What made you realize you could do both, like be creative, be technical in your career, and, do all that?
You asked such a great question. And it's something that I've struggled with. So it really hits the spot in that sense, right? And I'll give an example from one of my previous jobs where, my leader's leader, spoke to her, and then she in turn spoke to me about, asking me a really interesting question if, I post on LinkedIn during work hours, right? For context, I do have someone who helps me out. I also have scheduling tools and things like that. So that was a very interesting question to me. To set the context, this is also a company that has a very interesting culture where it's almost like everybody there has to kind of like be completely bought in. Like even your public image has to be tuned into what the company is saying. And I wasn't was for that. And it's interesting that, when I asked a question earlier, you talked about the purpose of having a podcast, meaning fulfilling a higher goal and a higher impact. And before my role, one of the first roles that I had was working at a nonprofit. After my entrepreneurship journey, working at a nonprofit that helped upskill, Black and brown folks to get into high paying tech jobs. And my content creation journey came out of that as a way to still impact people, even though I wasn't doing the work full time anymore. Right. So when I'm committed to that purpose and connected to that purpose, I feel like a company that even pays me to do the job doesn't own me. So that's not going to stop me from creating and putting out knowledge that I know is going to be beneficial to people and help them level up in their lives.
Awesome. Yeah, that is really honestly powerful. I feel like I am there on that journey as well because it's like your purpose and your impact goes beyond your title or your job or your company, and it's really like your life's mission. So it sounds like you decided like no matter what I get paid to do, I'm going to pursue what is on my heart to do, and I want to make an impact in that way, and still continue to give back. So I love to hear that because that is, the mission to leave the world better than we found it.
Absolutely.
So, what early skill, I mean, what do you feel like early on as you were doing this, right? I'm 5 episodes in. So, selfishly, this question might be for me, but what skills did you feel like you developed or mindset or just a decision that you made in terms?
In the weeds
Yeah.
advice that might be able to help you. So, and then third of all was also, something that I realize is that, not everybody who comes to you to say, hey, can you help me out is actually looking for help. Some people are looking for conversation. Some people are looking for access. Some people are looking to just validate themselves that they're doing something when they're not really doing anything. So, but it's true, right? So I had to figure out a way that, I would say, so okay, anyway, my podcast become that medium that helped me bring experts who I can then ask the questions that these people will ask me. So if you
Okay.
want to go into DevOps, guess what? I already spoke to someone who's in DevOps. And
Okay.
now you can watch that 1 hour podcast and get at least as much information as possible. And then there's also like almost a cheat code in there because if you reach out, to Diondria, for example, and say, hey, by the way, I watch a podcast with Juwon and I want to become a program manager, guess what? Now it's a better conversation,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yeah.
So it's things like that. It's like, how can I be that conduit? Because this literally happened. So Chanel Power, who's the founder of Mentor Me Collective, came on my show. And I met someone in the wild that I'd never seen before who told me, and after I watched a podcast, I learned about a program. And then I reached out to her and got into our program, and she does all this amazing certifications with like Google, GCP, etc., that literally helps get people career ready. And they found about that opportunity through my podcast and was able to get in based on the steps that she laid out on there. So for
Awesome.
ultimately the goal is to connect people with the knowledge, but also the resources that can help them level up.
Absolutely. That's so awesome. So all to say, I'm on the same thing you on. So I kind of echo your mission and I definitely relate to the point of the scalability, right? Like the scalability, the visibility and the right resources because tech is so broad. Somebody can come and ask you something you like, I don't know nothing about being an engineer. I'm a product manager. I don't know. If you have somebody in your podcast that has done that and is, well versed in that journey, like you said, they can check that out or they can reach out to that person as a resource. And you kind of still get to middleman that, right? You still get to touch them, but you get to pass them off to somebody that is more qualified to give that advice. So,
Absolutely. You said it 100% correct.
yes. So let's talk about kind of what it means to stand out in today's space. I feel like, I don't know when you got into tech, but I got in maybe like 6 years ago and it was quiet for this conversation. Whereas now there are a lot of people posting about tech. This is like everybody wants to do it. Everybody wants to talk about it, but not everybody is actually saying something, right? So, what do you feel like sets you apart? In the market when you're
That's
like,
a
yes,
That's a good question. And that was a question that I asked to myself a long time because before I became really comfortable in my skin. Okay, so interestingly, I think one of the first things that sets me apart, which I don't know if it directly answers your question, but at least answer the question for me is I'm the kind of person who asks first and asks questions later, right? So even when I didn't have this answer figured out, I was already acting and I then grew into the confidence to be able to do it. Is I know like there's gonna be always people who I don't think I'm very entertaining, right? I don't think I'm the funniest person. So there's a lot of disqualifying factors. And like I'm not the T person when it comes to like story time on TikTok.
Yeah.
But what I know that I do have is a lot of real advice, right? That could help you. That could help, the next person who wants to grow. And I know I could grind, right? I could reach around here and say, come talk to my people about, solution consultancy, solution engineering, etc. And I can bring that expertise and then try to connect people to that. And there's a wide enough field for us all to play in. That's the interesting thing. So even though there's more people talking about it, I'll tell you, there's a lot of fakers out there. There's a lot of people who are not driven by the right motivations. There's a lot of people who also aren't you, right? Because think about it this way. I had someone on my podcast yesterday who's a lady, a software engineer, a developer advocate, introverted. Like, how many people do you think you're going to find in that intersection? And that's why her story is going to be unique, right? Because not everybody's going to connect with that. But the people who do, if she doesn't exist and if she's not doing what she's doing, they probably don't get that opportunity. So I see that I have a mission. I play in this space. And my goal was always to understand that space specifically that I play in so that I can deliver the most value to the people who need it the most.
Yeah, I definitely resonate with that because, again, I feel like you have a great way of bringing out somebody's story. So no matter what you think, I think that's one of your talents and your gifts. So you have a great way of just like bringing all those things out to help them connect in different ways with the audience, right? Like for somebody to say, I'm an introvert, that connects with so many people. And they may say, like, this job is perfect for somebody who's like that. You know what I'm saying? For somebody that's trying to get into tech and don't want to be customer facing or giving, public speeches. So I definitely think that's a talent that you have. And I feel like it's something that sets you apart. Something else that I feel like sets you apart for me, as I would say a supporter, is just your genuine nature. You know what I'm saying? And your visibility. I feel like you do a great job of just showing how much you're working, how much you're networking, how much you're going to events. Like, all of those things help people stay inspired and stay connected to you and your message, because you show that you're still putting time into your craft, right? Every networking event is an opportunity to speak to someone else, to bring somebody else on, to inspire other people. So I think that's something else that sets you apart, even if it isn't from a content perspective, it's from the creative perspective. I think that you just constantly, you're working. And I think that that is amazing to see,
I
for
appreciate
sure.
that.
Yeah. So okay, was there like a piece of content, whether it was a post, a project, an episode, that really shifted your visibility or your credibility in the space, right? Because when you first start, nobody cares.
Nobody
Nobody
cares.
cares.
Yep. Yep.
So when did the shift start to happen, and what did that look like for you?
I don't even know that I could say that it's shifted, to be honest, because I just keep working. But I think the episode that almost means, and every single episode is special, I want to say that. But the one that really meant a lot to me and has given me a lot of motivation to keep going is the one with Kelsey Hightower. And it's for a specific reason. One, this is one of the most respect voices when it comes to tech content. This gentleman has been on at least 100 stages. He was, I think, keynote speaker, render of 24 that I was there. It was also keynote speaker this year again. He's been keynote speaker at so many events, right? And when I reached out to him, he responded immediately and then booked the conversation for maybe like the next week or the second week after that. Is the most viewed by far today, has maybe about close to 3,000 views now, gets roughly about 50 a week, even though like we don't promote it. But if you search for him, he has like hundreds of videos online about him, thousands of views. So of course that wasn't special to us specifically, just how big his impact is. And I think that was validation to me because I still message and my team still messages and email people. I message and email people who never respond. And that makes me never like take it personally because I'm like, maybe that's not what they want to do, right? Maybe then that's fine. That having such a strong voice within the community, give me that attention, give me that audience, and come on the podcast without any fuss, kind of like validate that this idea, right? It made it that I actually started to believe that I was doing something important and something that was impactful.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations on that. That's
Thank you.
amazing. That's one of those moments. That is a big moment to be like, I had a big guest. This is my
Yeah,
most episode. So I'm sure that helped you to want to continue and, just keep pushing and, trying to get some bigger fish around, get some bigger fish that are out there. That's awesome.
absolutely. Absolutely. And if you can get Kelsey on a podcast, I think that'd be great. He's such a chill guest.
You gave me an idea. I'm like, Kelsey,
Kelsey
let me go
Hightower,
to
you should
your
check him out. I mean, he's such an inspirational story too. I don't know if I'm saying it wrong. Kelsey, please forgive me. I don't think he finished college. He taught himself how to code. Uh, Started out like selling like Wi-Fi and LAN and things like that. Retired as a distinguished engineer at Google at
wow.
42 or something like that. Like I don't think it gets any better than that. Like in terms of this story, like super inspirational, super down to earth. And also like the great thing is, I said like speaking is a skill. He has it down to a T. And it was when I was listening to this keynote at Render 24 that it really came full circle. So it actually used to be at some point in his career, an artist manager for a comedian. So it shows why he's like such a great speaker because the hardest art form to do is comedy, stand-up comedy. Like
Oh yeah.
if you're
For
funny, you're funny. If you're not, you're not. And being funny is about communication. You have to think about the cadence of your jokes. You got to think about the punctuation, how you're delivering it. Like to be a great comedian, you have to be a great speaker. So it all made sense to me when he said that. So very, very interesting and potentially a great future guest for you.
yes, that's awesome. I'm gonna have to check it out. I'm gonna have to check him out. Have to check the episode out. You definitely inspired me to just go and listen and hear his story too. But I feel
Absolutely.
like you've clearly found your voice. But let's talk about okay, this is something I'm working on. Let's talk about the discipline behind the creativity. Everybody is creating content, right? Everybody is creating content, but it definitely takes a different level of discipline to actually discipline and confidence to execute. So maintaining it, that's
You
where
bring
most
up
people
such a
fall
great point. You bring up such an amazing point. And I'll even give you another instance of to show my imperfection. So I tried to float a second podcast this year, and my biggest disadvantage doing that was not setting the same cadence that I did with working in tech, right? So I wanted to do a more tech news
off.
type
Okay.
podcast that was constantly going to be following the news. One, the process was a lot more tedious because I was recording backstage instead of doing it live, like the live stream. So it just meant like everything was already online. The second bit of it was it also required me doing a lot of research before cutting, clipping, and then editing after. So it just made it so much harder. That podcast only has maybe about 4 or 5 episodes, and I started in February. Whereas with working in tech, because it was live, in fact, I set it to just be once every week. So the first one I was supposed to do, my guest didn't show up. So I just did it. I did it myself. It's the most awkward video that you'll find on the internet. I asked myself the question and then I answered it, right? I'm like, this podcast is starting with or without guests
I'm
today.
with you. I'm
Period.
with you. Listen, I am with you when you write. Cause listen, if I don't do it now, I might not never do it. So I'm just gonna do it.
And for like, I think the first like 30 or 40 episodes, we didn't skip a single week. Right. Of
Wow,
course,
that's
I've taken breaks in between now, but like we went 30 or 40 weeks straight. And it was just episode after episode after episode. And now we just got that discipline, right? So we got to do it. We missed 2 weeks recently, right? And then I was also in Europe for the summer. So 3 weeks in May that I didn't do it. But beyond that, I'm always there, always.
so how do you stay that consistent? Like with that creative output? I know you said it being live helps, right? So you don't really maybe have to edit it post, like it's live, it's posted already, people can go and view it. But how do
Yep.
you stay consistent? How do you get the guests? Like how do you keep the schedule going? I know you got a life.
Yeah. So the way we do it is like, of course, I do have a team, so I don't want to take all the credit. And what my team and I do is like, we already have like a way that we try to find guests, and we have even like a method around it. Clearly, like, of course, someone who's in their career, who's qualified enough to give the advice. That's definitely one. The second of all is it does help if they have some social media or speaking experience, but it doesn't hurt even if they don't. Like you didn't, right? Again, the credit. So again, the credibility is the most important because we're not looking for performers, not looking for fakers. Like if someone is a great public speaker but they've never done it, I would never bring them on. But I will bring on an intern. So I'm not. It's not because I'm looking for VPs or directors or things like that. I'm just looking for people who can share an insight
Experience.
that
Yeah.
will help someone in their journey. So for me, it's even less. So even like when we bring on directors, like I try to bring them to the level of someone who's trying to break in. Because if you're talking about like office politics and things like that, I mean, these people don't even have a job. How do you think they're gonna care about that? You see what I'm saying? So it's
Yeah.
like I do want to bring that relatability, and that's the most important thing. But of course, there's still a way that you deliver content that makes people excited, make them laugh, and like that keeps them engaged. So we don't want to miss out on that. So then we build out that list and then we just start hitting people up and then try to schedule it for months in advance because this is the funny thing, right? Just like I was giving my example, the way we don't take ourselves serious is a freaking joke. But if I have a guest that is coming on, I'll do everything to show up. So I think my guests are also the people who keep me disciplined because even if I negotiate with myself and not do it because I don't want to, if someone is going to show up, then best believe I'm going to show up too.
No, that's I guess because it's like I already scheduled. It's like having a trainer. You got to go to the gym because you know they're gonna be waiting on you. So it's like, yeah, I have to show up. So that is a good strategy to stay consistent. And I definitely think the part where you mentioned finding people who have experience versus a title, and also ensuring that the message still hits your core audience. Like we don't want to talk up here. Let's come down here and talk about how to get in, and
Mm,
then maybe we can touch on how to move up.
yep.
So what kind of content do you feel like has performed best for you? And then what did it teach you about your audience or your message, right? Because obviously we always go in thinking we know what people want. And then, over time, like you get feedback or you get, different
You see
reactions.
what's
So what is,
performing. Yep.
yeah, yeah.
So interestingly, I think like my raw, unfiltered content has been the best performer. And it's a shame on me that I've not made more of it.
You said,
Right?
what is it? What'd you say?
Raw, unfiltered content, short form content.
Raw, unfiltered content.
Yep. Those have been the best performers that I've had so far, but I've also not been able to replicate it, right? Because content is just so much easier when it's regimented, right? But then you don't get that same raw burst of energy. Even the way you deliver it, right? It doesn't hit the same, right? Right. So it's like,
So cringe. Oh my gosh. Content has probably been the most cringe thing that I've ever done, but it's rewarding. So when you say raw and unfiltered content, what does that look like? Like, is it you working? Like, what is that?
so I do have a bunch of different formats that I've tested. So for example, like working in tech is like, a podcast format, interview. I do have like my mind on the street that I do when I go to tech conferences. There's that one. So I also have a different like vertical that I used to do that I don't do anymore. And shame on me for not doing it anymore, but I'm definitely trying to get back into it. It's called Tech Explained. And it's kind of like, I pick different contexts like LLMs, APIs, and NLPs. So just basic thing that people may not understand or might have heard and just making it simple. In fact, I did one that really performed really well where um, I was talking about it, and then I was saying, giving like very different relatable examples. Like, so for example, like when Google is showing you like different flights and different prices, it's not because they have that data, it's because they have APIs that's connected to those providers that's pooling that data. And then I use something as simple as like, think about like you in a restaurant, right? The kitchen is the one making your food.
Yes.
You're sat at the table. When you make that API request, it's essentially like telling the server what you want, and then the
And then go.
server goes to the back and brings the food back. And that's the thing too. It's like one of the guys that I really like the most is like when it comes to tech content, is a guy who's always teaching data structures and algorithms. I think his name is Ariel Knight. and it uses it and says like, imagine if we try to like hit the lick. This is what we do. This is the first style. This And it's so interesting because it's like, even if you don't like the content, you're gonna like it for the entertainment value. And for me, like knowledge, the most important thing about knowledge is that people get it. It doesn't matter how you get it, it matters that you get it. That's another different version. But for the real content specifically, I did a couple of them sitting in the car, just talking specifically about a topic because there's certain things that I talk about in the podcast that I gloss over a little bit. So I then pick some of those out, for example, and saying like, maybe networking is like a lot of people play on it because networking is something that a lot of people hear, but it's like, how do you really network? So when I say raw and unfiltered, I'm not scripted or anything. I'm just saying off the dome. And those tend to really connect, right? So yeah, those are like the different types of content, and that's the one that connects the most.
Okay. Yeah. Well, shout out to you for having like 8 streams of content that you are. But no, I do like the on the street interviews. I think that was, like I said, I think that was probably one of those things that also kind of like bubbled you back up in a different way, right? Because you can see the thumbnails and stuff on LinkedIn, and LinkedIn is so whatever. You can see people taking pictures, but I like those videos that you were doing, like just approaching people, use that Afro tech, asking questions, stuff like that. So that was really cool. But I also connect with the raw and relatable because even when you just told that API story, I am a resident nerd. So I love talking about APIs. I love talking about microservices, technology, all that stuff. But I too like to make it in a way that is consumable for everybody, right? I don't like talking up here
Beyond
about
people's
tech.
heads. Yep.
Yeah. I like to, so when I worked for contact center, when I worked in a contact center, I used to tell my family, I always explain it the way that I tell my family, right? And I used to be like, when you call into AT&T, you got to press 1 to get to this department and 2 to get to that department. Like we built that software, right? We built the bots that you talk to on the web. Like, just finding a way to connect with other people that they understand. It's like,
And
yeah,
make
everybody
them
know what
relate to it. Yep.
yeah, like everybody know you give your waiter the order, they go get the food and bring it back from the kitchen. That's how API work.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
So yeah, so that is cool. I really love those analogies. So I feel like we talked a lot about, real outcomes, visibility, impact. But income is also, income is always important, right? So I know right now that you're building a brand. You're not just building a brand, you're working towards something that's gonna move the needle, right, in the direction that you're looking to go, to making an impact in the industry, but also, having earning potential, right, so that you can invest more into your craft. So are you earning anything from your creative work right now, or like what avenues are you pursuing? Do you have books, courses, things that you're selling? Like what all is happening for you?
So one of my goals was never to monetize this specifically for the audience, right? But recently I shifted slightly in that goal. So like for example, as we're saying, I started my podcast because I wanted to do less and less of like the one-on-one meetings, right? And I was successful at doing that for so long, but I realized I do not want to take away that access completely from people. So recently I actually just signed up to topmate.io, right? To give people the opportunity to be able to book a one-on-one with me if they want to, right? And I have like, I think a couple of different packages. So there's a standard, like just quick 10-minute call. If you have a specific thing you want to talk about and you need specific advice, you could book that 10 minutes for $10. So essentially I've kind of like done the pricing to where it's like $1 a minute, right? And that way, like you could take advantage of the cheapest thing, right? The price of a Big Mac and some fries and drink, right? So to where like it's not, and that's the thing is like I want people to be mindful of their time as they're mindful of mine,
Yes.
and they can get the
Yes.
most value out of it so that it works. Because that was a way for me to kind of like get. But again, it wasn't so much of a monetization strategy. It was just more of a I want people to value the time. But in terms of actual monetization, my goal has always been to make the money from the brands, right? To help that pay for it. So last year I got my first ever brand deal. This
Congratulations.
year, I've gotten 3 more, which is great. And what I'm doing now, that there was a guy who put me onto it. Shout out Lloyd George. He's on LinkedIn. This guy made like 100K doing brand deals last year. And of course, I don't mean this in any disrespectful way, but I think on most but one platform, I have more followers than he does, right? But that was the thing that opened my eyes is that you don't need followers to make money. Because if you think about it this way, and this was the biggest mind opening for me. If a brand, which I launched something in the past and we had to pay models, right? We had to pay videographer. Essentially, I'm a model and a videographer, right? So even if I don't have anything else to offer a brand, I have my voice, I have the content, and I have a face to market it. One of the biggest mind games that we've played on ourselves is that you need a million subscribers or whatever to get monetized, but it's not true, right? Virality and distribution is a different thing from brand image. And think about it this way.
Okay.
If you picked, let me try to think about it. Let's say you had a boot camp, right? And you picked DDG or you picked me to try to advertise it. Well, there might be some instances where DDG might be the better person, right? Maybe because you're trying to talk to a specific audience and you want him to relate to them. But if you're looking for authority when it comes to the content, I'm going to have way more authority than him, even though he has way more recognition than I do, right? So that reframing was super important for me to understand, but the difference is now you're not going to sit around and wait for the brands to come find me. Now I'm doing the one doing the outreach. And just the same with the guests, even more, I'm getting ghosted a lot, right? So it's gonna happen. But the point is when they stop to ghost you, because ultimately for me, I'm just trying to get to 10 deals this year, right? And if they pay me an average amount, right, and I do that 10x, at least it covers my cost for the year, right?
Yeah.
So for me, that's the goal. It's like, how can I find similar brands who have similar mission that we can partner together to drive their message and their mission, right? So that was kind of like the switch for me in terms of monetization.
Okay. So I think that brings, oh my gosh. First of all, thank you for that. True gem was dropped right there. You looking for the brands because that is honestly the best way for you to build your brand as well, right? Because they got the budget. It's like they got the budget. Invest in me. I'm already investing in myself. And then your audience already just reaps everything that you do, right? So I definitely hear you when you say like I want to keep my platform free for my viewers, but I also want to find other ways to diversify and to monetize off of what I'm already doing.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, so I feel like you just gave us, you gave us the blueprint. Now let's kind of shift gears so we can talk about some of our signature coffee moments. I always like to ask people, and obviously I feel like you're a little more tapped in than most because we're talking about tech right now. What's the trend in tech that excites you? And then one that might make you be like, ooh, I don't know if we should go down that path. It gives you a little bit of pause.
Should we talk about the spiciest trend right now?
Spicy. I'm gonna get into it. Let's do it.
Okay, number one tech advice. If you're gonna have an office wife, maybe not go to a concert. I'm joking.
And be booed up with your coworker. Yeah, I think that should be great advice. For sure.
Oh my God. And if you're looking for a CEO job, now is the time to shoot your shot to astronomer because they will be looking for a new CEO soon.
And the head of HR as well. They got some spaces to fill.
They got some spaces to fill for sure. But on a more serious note, the thing that excites me the most is also the thing that irritates me the most, right? Artificial intelligence. I think we're living in an age and era where AI is going to do a lot of wonders, like a lot of amazing things. I was actually watching Scott Hanselman's TED Talk yesterday, where he gave such a powerful and emotive speech about how he went from not having so much growing up and how technology was promised to do a lot of different stuff for him in his career. But sometimes technology has become like also this negative force, right? Potentially in the world. And we're seeing that a lot now in the tech workforce. And you see a lot of like CEOs that just feels like they're going in a frenzy talking about AI is going to take your job. Like, slow down, bro. Slow down. We know like every time there's a new technology, there's going to be job loss. We know that. And it's happened whether it's with a typewriter or photocopy machines or even tractors, right? There's a reason why less than 1% of America are farmers, and yet they make food that surplus and gets exported, right? Because we have that explosion. But one of the things that we don't also lose sight of is who would think that you have this many full-time creators? There's thousands of people who have over 1 million followers on YouTube, right? So every time there's an opportunity taken away, there's going to be new opportunity. What I don't like, which is the irritation, is the almost sadistic way of just like pushing AI is going to do that. I think even if that's the case, we should be more sober. We should be more thoughtful and think about ways that we're creating new opportunity, because ultimately, if AI is going to create more productivity, does that not mean that we're going to have more wealth? Does that not mean that we then have more ways to keep more people engaged and more people excited and fulfilled? I think that should be the approach and not. But the thing that excites me also is that it's going to be like a dude literally vibe coded a startup that sold for $80 million to, I think it was Wix or some other site builder or GoDaddy, right? There's people creating applications, websites, services today that they can do on their own without any team that they weren't able to do before. So
Yes.
I think that's something that everybody needs to get tapped in with. Learn AI, learn how you can use it, and figure out ways that you can use it to solve problems in your community, because that could be your next $1 million idea.
So, I mean, you hit everything right on the head, right? Especially the irritation part. Because I also agree, I feel like there is always going to be opportunity, right? Like all of these things are created, but so many more things are going to be created in the future. And just like you said, there is a career path right now that did not exist in the way that it exists 5 years ago. Content creation, the way people are quitting their full time jobs, making the most money that they've ever made, creating content, and a lot of brands or major companies are investing in these types of things. So there is a lot of opportunity that's going to come, even from, learning AI, building things, using it to create stuff for you. I know everybody know ChatGPT. It's so funny because ChatGPT was like, what is that? 2 years ago, and now it's everybody's best friend, it's a boyfriend, a therapist, a workout instructor. But just like that, like you can use that type of technology to build and create, right? Your
Mhm.
next $1 million idea, you can have the idea and tell Chat GPT, and it can help you build out those things, and that AI model, and finding all the information on the internet can also help to optimize, right? Lessons that you don't have to learn, skills that you don't have to build, or being able to learn those skills one by
Mhm.
one and knowing exactly what they are. I think that's the benefit of AI, is having access and being able to leverage it and find information that sometimes seemed implied, or if you know, and now you have the opportunity to, leverage it and build yourself and the future of yourself, or your next big thing. You can build it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So another question, so I want you to spill the tea. What's the turning point in your career where you feel like you had to use your voice differently?
How do you mean? In
I mean,
what
and
specific
honestly,
way?
it can be, it can be from when you decided to start your podcast. Because even something that you talked about earlier in the conversation was somebody from your company asking you, like, hey, do you use LinkedIn on, company time or whatever? Because I know that there are a lot of people that strictly use their LinkedIn to promote work. I know there are some companies that, require, encourage, nudge, ask, demand,
Bully.
for, but yeah, for your platform. So even just like, what courage did it take for you to just decide, or was that something that you've always done, that I'm actually going to use this to further my brand and not further the company's brand or the company's mission? Because that's kind of where I am. I feel like I don't even want to tell nobody where I work no more. I just want you to see the work that I'm doing, because that ain't
You,
important. I get
you,
paid from them. They already got their stuff.
we're both there. Like I'm contemplating like just putting my LinkedIn where I work on confidential or like stealth, just for that same reason. It's like, and it came from that company that I was talking about, where even, rather than being able to mention the company, I would say, oh, I work in big tech, because I didn't really want to, they have policies around you could never comment on a company, you can't see anything. Like even if there was a post about the company out in the wild, you never see anything, right? Which I respected, right? And that's the thing, is like, then if the company can have its own voice that it curates, I want to have my own voice that I
Yes.
curate. So it's
Yeah.
like, do you, I'm gonna do me. But specifically to the mission and to this goal, I think one of the things that I see, in fact, I say this all the time. I'm like, why I chose this route was after leaving the nonprofit, one of my biggest inspiration to actually start doing this was Zeus. So initially I created this website that was just supposed to share more positive Black news. But I quickly realized that to grow a media platform is very expensive and it costs a lot. So I then decided to scale that down from the website and the platform into just something that was more personal, creator mode that I could do. And hopefully, if that grows up, then it can become a platform. So I realized it had to be almost like a bottom up integration rather than a top down one, right? And I figured, like, in the world where we have, and no shade to anybody like BET, Zeus, and things like that. And we see a lot of the things that can be fixed in the community, but people are not addressing it. I took it upon myself to be one of the folks who are doing that, right? Because if you think about it, one of the things that would bother me the most is like people would say, oh, if you talk about crime or something else in the community, people will say things like, it's always because there's poverty. I'm like, so let's go fix the poverty. It's like, how do we get people in better situations where they're not doing silly things, right? And that was an answer that I couldn't really get. So I'm like, instead of getting frustrated and angry or annoyed about it, how do I become the change in the world to start to inspire people, at least who have that drive to change, to figure out that there's a better way and they can do it, right? So that was kind of like the inspiration for me.
That's awesome. That's powerful. I feel like you've continuously doubled down on how intentional you've been about your approach to it. And it's cool to hear like started big, but then we can start from the bottom up. Cuz I also feel like in bringing it back to something else you said prior to connecting those threads, you said that you don't have to have the most followers to make an impact or to do a brand deal. And I think that also kind of lends itself to what you said on where you wanted to start versus where you actually started. And sometimes the idea is so big and it's so heavy, and you can get discouraged, opposed to being okay with starting small and building from there. I feel like when you see so many other people doing things, you want to just jump and do what they did. But it's like you didn't really see what it took to build Zeus, right? You didn't see what it took to build TMZ or BET. So being like, I can start here, make my impact, and build those connections, find my mentors, find my investors, find my partners that also have the same vision, and we can get there. So I definitely think that's amazing.
And yeah, absolutely. Everything you said. But one thing I want to clarify was the Zeus part was actually, I was angry, right? Because I'm like, how does a Batman get to the ability and the finance to build such a big platform and promote degeneracy, right? So I'm like, I'm going to build the exact opposite of that.
Okay, okay, okay. Oh wow. So it was like a rival. It's like I'm the
Oh,
good
yeah.
Zeus. And the crazy part, just a little bit about Zeus, like it didn't even start as that. Like it really started as somewhere that creators could have their own shows, like B Simone and all the other people, and it was fun and it was light and it was positive drama, right? It was quirky, fun, content creator drama, and then it turned into demon.
Darkness. And you know what's funny too is that when the story then came about the guy, how he cut everybody off, how he cheated everybody, I'm like, of
Yeah,
course they
well, I
have
mean,
that
yeah,
content.
of course, of course. And I'm sure it's like the people that he backdoored for lesser, I'm sure that new content probably didn't align with what their original vision was. And that probably was another reason why he ended up pushing them out. Cause it's like that was more of like what he wanted to do.
Yep.
So, okay. So I always ask a networking tip. You kind of touched on networking earlier, but what do you feel like an intentional way that you've built your network that's helped to honestly just elevate you overall, right? We can talk about it in a career sense, but being married or having kids, like being in financial spaces, all of those things, networking in different areas can help you to elevate your life. Like, what is something that you have done or an intentional way that you continue to, elevate through networking?
Brick by brick. That's what I gotta say. Brick by brick, put in the work. Just like you said, like in all those different facets, networking can be like a difference maker. And it's something that you got to actively invest in, right? Like if I sit at home and play Fortnite all day, I'm not going to have a network. Maybe I'll have a network of other gamers who I play with and meet online, but I got to ask myself, is that the kind of outcome I'm looking for? That's a funny quote that I'm going to say about networking that's probably going to drive the point home. Someone says, never marry for money, but go where the rich people are and marry for love.
Want to be the smartest person in the room. Like, I think I was listening to a story or I was watching. I can't even. I don't remember where I got this from, but it was something that said like you should always want to be a freshman, right?
Yep.
Like you should always want to be a freshman at something. And I feel like that is another way to intentionally network. Like, don't go in a room thinking that people should want to come to you. Like, you should be wanting to learn from other people and connecting with them based off of what they do. But I do find as I'm networking, it's always important to have something to share, right? Something that will bring somebody back to you. Like you can go talk to somebody that's a VP or whatever, and you can say, oh, yeah, I have a really cool podcast. Like I talk to people like you all the time, like, would love to have you on. And now that's another way to connect versus you just asking them what they do. It's like, oh, I do something, we can, transfer knowledge, or we have things that are in common, and then maybe you can be with some other VPs or you can pass it along.
And that's the thing. I think many people miss out on it is you have to have a giver's mindset, right? You have to invest in community if you want to build. I actually wrote a couple of things down yesterday that I shared. I said, if you want to make the most of tech conferences, which is a great networking place, arrive early, right? So you can just get more out of the day. Ask questions after panels, taking the time to bless you with knowledge. If you can ask a question, ask a question. It also gets you noticed. Compliment people's work, right? Like give, ask what people are working on, right? So don't just, ramble about all the things that you're doing. Someone also said something. It's like you, if you want something like you have to be interested to be interesting,
Yes.
right? Like you
That's
have to be invested in other people's work too. Like understand, like we all want to feel good. And it's not just you. We didn't come here to kind of like clap you up, to clap us up too. Then we could share value and follow up with people. Like you'll meet so many amazing people, especially if there's mutual value.
follow up.
Follow up. And I guess what I didn't had here is like in the process of even and I said networking equals listening more than selling, right? Like you want to engage with people because think about it this way. I'm gonna paint two scenarios, right? You tell me you have a podcast, right? And I say, oh, cool, I have a podcast too, and I speak over you and like whenever we get to anything. But I turn around and say, oh, you have a podcast. So what is it about? What kind of guests do you have? And then once we get done tomorrow, I send you 3 guests, potential. Who I say, would these people be people you would like to have on your guest list? Even if we never speak again for the next 6 months, I'll never forget you, right? Because right, because you took the time to do the work and just do something that most people would never do for me, right? And that now has put you in a different bracket to where I now look at you very differently. The challenge is people will go like, oh, I want a job, I want this, I want that, that they lose all sense of everything else, right?
Yeah.
It's like, and there's always a way. So maybe you're just breaking into your career right now, so you don't even have all these VPs and amazing people to talk to, right? But can you give a compliment? Like you gave me advice yesterday. Can I reach back out and say, wow, Diondria, that was so amazing yesterday? Like call out specific things and say, this part specifically that you mentioned about, not focusing too much about the numbers, but focusing on this because you've implanted something. And me coming back and saying what you actually planted, because to you, you just said something and you forgot about it. But if I bring it back, that thing is even more valuable to you now because I treated it as valuable. So it's like people miss out on these little things that tend to compound later. And that's the biggest problem.
Yeah, I think that is, yeah, that's a good point, because as you said, if I reference the things that you're saying, it lets you know that I am listening and I am invested and I am actually taking in the information versus if I ask you a question and then I just go on a tangent and talk about me. It's like, well, you don't even care what I do. Why you even ask? Why did you ask me that? But yeah, I definitely feel like following up, that's key. And I feel like you can always be better at something that you're good at. I feel like you get into spaces where you are intentional about it, you aren't intentional about it. But I definitely feel like finding those communities of people that share your values and continuing to nurture those relationships is what's important. I'm currently working on nurturing relationships and just still continuing to find your tribe, because each level that you go to, you need people. You know what I'm saying? So I definitely agree. So, what's a mentor? Who's a mentor that has helped you lead, create, or think more clearly? And maybe some advice that they gave that stuck with you.
Um, I've had a lot of amazing different mentors over my career, but the wildest thing that I'd say, for example, is like some of my biggest mentors are people I'd never spoken to. For example, like the thing that I was listening to from Scott Anselman yesterday, were very inspirational to me. I was lucky because I've had the opportunity to speak to him when I was at Reskill Americans, which was a nonprofit I was working at. But I take inspiration from any and everywhere, right? Like I have a bunch of books behind me. Like those are all my mentors that I consider because they've all taught me something, right? And that's even the thing that people don't realize is that you don't have to have direct access, which is what I was saying about access earlier. Like I have 76 episodes online of amazing different people I've talked to, including Diondria, right? Like if you're not going on there to even leverage that thing, there's nothing else I'm going to tell you that's going to be valuable. If you already did the prior work, think about it this way, right? All of the work online, that's the ordinary. If I give you the extra, you get the extraordinary. If you've not done the ordinary, like if I give you extra, you're gonna treat it like an extra. Oh my
Yeah.
God. I feel like a pastor right now. I'm dropping.
Strange.
Right? So you want extraordinary, not like extra on a movie set, right? Like, and that's the thing. It's like people do not want to do the work, but they want to get the outcome. And that's where the challenge lies.
It's the fast, quick. I mean, I feel like I love TikTok down, but TikTok just didn't ruin attention spans and everything else. You know what I'm saying? Because,
Mm.
like you said, it's like there is a wealth of knowledge out there, and to your point, I think of Diary of a CEO.
Yep.
I think
That's
of
a good
Steve
one.
Harvey. His daughter has a podcast. Mel Robbins has a podcast. There are a few. Even just Earn Your Leisure. I don't know if you went to the Afro Tech in Austin a couple years back.
I know they did have the event, but I
Yes,
wasn't able to go.
that Earn Your Leisure segment was probably one of the best segments that I sat in. That was the best session that I sat in. And it was because they wanted to give people in the audience things that they could do in ways that they could approach whatever they had going on. Whereas I feel like a lot of, sometimes with different podcasts, people just like to hear themselves talk, right? People just want to say, I'm amazing. This is my life story. But it's like, okay, enough about you. I came here to learn so that I can implement those things. So I also just appreciate you giving so much detailed advice on the things that you have done that have helped to aid in your success, challenges that you face, and that the work is just what's most important. I could
Thank you.
honestly I could
Thank you so much.
keep going and going, but I know we on a time crunch. So before we hit the road, I just want to do just like a couple little rapid fire questions. These are just a
Let's
fun way
go.
to end the episode. Okay, so first question is, what is your go-to coffee order? Or are you a coffee drinker? If not, tell me what you like to go to.
I usually do like a latte. I feel like that's
Okay.
the basic one
Hot or
because
ice?
I'm usually hot, even sometimes when it's sunny outside, because like that's just the vibe. I don't know why, but of course I'm not opposed to like heist, but you know, hot
That
is
is
like
not
the typical.
millennial like of you. That is, millennials, we gotta stereotype. We gotta keep the vibes going. Okay, so second question is, what is a quote or mantra that fuels your creative journey?
That's a great question because when I was so young, or when I was a lot younger, like I love quotes so much, and I used to like cram them. Like I want, check a book or newspaper or whatever, and I'll write them out. There's one that has stuck with me, and I still shared this 2 days ago. Says so. There's a word that people typically use, like learned or learned colleague, learned this, which is kind of like a way that they used to put people on titles on pedestals. So it says we don't want learned professors, we want learning professors, right? Because a man who does not read is no different from a man who cannot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I love that. It's like a growth mindset
Growth
mantra.
mindset, of course, of course. 1% better every day.
Okay, cool. Last but not least, this one. It's gonna be good. It's gonna put you on your toes. What is one bold move someone listening should make this week? What would you encourage them to do?
Quit your job. I'm sorry. No, don't quit your job. Do not quit your job. But I would say start a course and finish it. Like the biggest thing that I found, and yeah, wow, you brought me to this moment. And I'll say the biggest thing that someone told me, because I've been an entrepreneur for so many years, right, to not get an MBA. And I bought that advice. I was never going to get an MBA. But when we started to see a tighter job market, I left my last job and I was in between this one. I would apply to a bunch of jobs and I'll see like MBA preferred on those roles. I think that almost became like this. And a bunch of my friends also got the MBA. So I felt like everything was kind of like leading me to that. And I finally bit the bullet and I'm like, I'm going to do it. Going into it, I had a very different mindset, right? I had a crowd I wanted to be my MBA. I had a specific type. And then I chose it, but it didn't quite pan out the way that I expected it to. And in my mind, I was just going to get a degree and be done. But the things that I've learned while getting that MBA have been completely transformational. There are so many things that I knew building a business, building a career, right, that weren't just things that I learned from learning them, but learning things in that MBA have been completely transformational. I'll give you a very practical example. I spent most of my career in e-commerce, which shows like I've done a bunch of buying, selling, and different things, but I didn't know how terrible I was at negotiating, right? And even the science of negotiation. So recently, I wanted to do the irrigation around my house, put sprinklers in for the grass, and I got quoted anywhere from $4,500 to $6,000. And I kind of like anchored on that price, so that was what it was going to be. But when I learned that the key ingredient when it comes to negotiation is information, right? And we did exercises where we had used car exercise, for example, where someone had a set of information and the other person had a set of information. So because you didn't know what it costs on the other end, right, you were only negotiating based on the limited information that you had. So what I did was I went into ChatGPT. I told it to break down what it will cost in terms of labor, parts, everything to do this project. I got between 1,800 to 2,500. I ended up paying $2,000 for this, saved 2,500 as a result of that information. So it's not things that I learned that are abstract that I took away. I'm learning things that in life skill is literally transformational for me today. So my advice to anyone is like, no knowledge is a waste. Get knowledge in any and every way because it will serve you in more ways than one.
Negotiation is a skill that you're gonna have everywhere you go. When you go to Jamaica and you trying to get a taxi, you got to negotiate. So I definitely know saving 25.
Salaries, packages, like we learned every single thing. And it's like, yo, my next job, they won't see me coming.
Yeah, yeah, you like, I got it. We gonna get the top dollar. Well, Juwon, thank you for pulling up to the coffee chat. You have given us, man, this has been an amazing conversation. This has inspired me so much, given me so much clarity, so many gems, so many real conversations that I feel like so many people need. It was a pleasure getting to interview you because I know you're usually sitting in my seat and you don't get to share this much info with your listeners. So thank you for being on for sure.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And to be a shameless plug, I do have a podcast also called Working in Tech. It's on YouTube every Thursday, right? If tech is like your wheelhouse and that's what you're trying to get into, amazing guests every single Thursday talking about different topics from project management, solution engineering, software engineering, product management, just to help you figure out what path is best for you in tech, as you take that journey.
Awesome. So I'm also gonna put Juwon's link in the description. I'm also gonna put his LinkedIn on there as well because his LinkedIn is so cool. He got so much great content and it's consistently rolling out. So definitely want to make sure that y'all can stay in contact with him. If you guys have listened, if this episode spoke to you, share it, tag a friend, follow Juwon on YouTube and on LinkedIn. And last but not least, just take some action, whether it's writing your first post, launching that podcast, or just owning your divine gifts. Build your lane with intention. And until next time, stay creative, stay strategic, and keep leading over some coffee. All right. Thanks, guys.
Bye, everyone.